Guys and girls, we have got Barbara Corcoran coming to us live. You can now see us, everyone. A big shout out from AREC Australia. Thank you. Barbara, we've been looking forward to this for about 9 months, and the moment's come. In this room, there are around 3,000 real estate agents that adore you, and at the same time, they want to spend the next hour or so learning and getting into the mind of, how you were able to be such an exceptional, successful real estate agent in the toughest market in the world. I mean, can I ask you, why do you think the reason so many people chose you to sell their properties with you?
I think as a young agent, I think the magic dust was they trusted me. And I think they deserved to trust me because I was trustworthy. I always was a straight shooter. I told them like it was. Even with the obstinate home seller initially who wanted an outrageous price, I would tell them exactly what I thought it was worth, which often cost me the listing. But I would also tell them that I was willing to try an outrageous price and work my ass off at it to make sure that they get it. And then we would adjust the price later. So I think the trust factor was everything in building your initial customer base and having them feel comfortable recommending you to someone else.
So, Barbara, this is an issue in Australia, and when we had the conversation with you a few weeks ago, we talked about that there had been a correction in various marketplaces, and it's quite common, and I'm sure it happens in the USA, where agents go in and overprice to get the business. But what you're saying is that you can actually give people hope and still do clean business.
I'd even go a step farther than that, Tom. I often myself and to all of my real estate agents suggested in a market that the seller wanted to hear that the property is worth more, to tell them it was worth more. Now, maybe that sounds a little outrageous and maybe a little dishonest, but it wasn't intended that way. It was simply reading the customer, and in those markets, the customer wanted to hear a higher price, and so we said, we will list it for that price, but let's make an appointment right now that in 2 weeks hence, we evaluate the feedback and possibly adjust the price based on what's going on. If you think about it, the only other option you have is to wait it out. Let the other agent give a very high price, lose the listing to the other agent, and then hope that the seller comes back to you. But as you well know, that rarely happens. So I think the key is tell the seller you're willing to do the high range, make sure they understand the low range of what you really think it's worth, and immediately have an agreement that you'll readjust the price 2 weeks hence, 2 weeks after that, so you work the price down to what is a realistic number that you can sell it at. And why you have a better shot there is the seller is on your page then, because too often they choose the wrong agent based on price, and that's a reality of the market, so you might as well wrap your hands around it.
Okay. Can I ask you, as an agent, were you highly organised and structured, or did you go with the flow? What was your approach?
Well, I'm hardly secure enough ever to not be organized. I'm probably the most well-prepared person I've ever met in my life, simply because I don't want to get caught with my pants down and have someone think that I'm inept. So no, I was always prepared for everything. But I'm also simple-minded, and I found as a very young agent that there was just a couple of things that were really key in qualifying potential clients, or customers, as we call them in New York. Is that what you call buyers in Australia, customers? That's what you call them.
We use that term, yeah.
You do, yeah, all right. So for me, most of my calls came in over a phone line, as they did for all the agents in New York City. And it's still typically when you'll introduce yourself to someone. Today is over a phone line. What I learned to do is immediately ask the only important question in all of real estate sales which was, when do you need the apartment for? And if their answer was short term, I would rate that customer A. I'd rate them A, whether or not they were realistic, whether or not they seemed reasonable in any way, whether they had any knowledge of the market, but I would rate them an A. And if they weren't urgent, I would rate them a B, no urgency at all, C, and I only focused on those customers that needed something soon. And you know what? As simple as that sounds, that became my system that I used my whole life, and I taught every agent that ever worked for me to always rate the agent. I would sit down with my agents periodically who were struggling, and they would come with a huge deck of cards as to all of the customers they have. And when I went through the cards with them, I would just say, when do they need it for? When do they need it for? When do they need it for? And in the end, they probably had maybe 2 real customers. The rest was a total waste of time. You're just educating people. They were never going to do anything for 6 months, 9 months. So I think hyper-focusing on that was my organizational system, as simple as that might sound.
Okay, so what you're saying is the key qualifier for you is the timing of that buyer, the timing. You know, the sooner that they wanted to buy, you would treat them like you'd sit with them like a stamp sticks on an envelope. You would just sort of...
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd lock them in my garage and not let them go. And there was one other qualifier, truly, that I paid attention to, and maybe this sounds luxurious, which was, do I like them? Once I met them, if I didn't like someone, I dropped them. I know that sounds extravagant, but you know, over all the years in real estate, if I didn't like someone, chances are they didn't like me back. And no matter how I tried, I generally didn't sell them anything. And I definitely preach that to all of my agents in my company. And I really encourage them to drop losers, because losers will drain your body and your soul and make you feel like you want to quit the business. And I think you have to enjoy what you're doing. It doesn't mean you have to love people, but if they're abusive of your time, your energy, you generally won't sell them anything in the end.
Okay, well look...
I have an earpiece problem if you still see me doing this again and again.
Okay, as long but you can hear everything. You can hear everything because you're responding.
On and off.
Okay.
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, so Barbara, let's talk about this issue.
Yes.
So where you talk about the mental side and the psychology side, like many estate agents or real estate people are uncomfortable with rejection. You know, they fail to prospect. They're scared of, you know, people being abusive to them when they're prospecting. They're afraid of failure. You were known as being someone that was very resilient. Are you resilient? Do you think you're resilient?
Yeah, I think I'm the most resilient person I've ever met. But I wasn't always.
Okay.
You know.
So...
I'm sorry, did you want to ask
no,
something of that?
Elaborate.
I think I had a huge advantage coming into the real estate field, because when I was in school, I was a horrific student. And as a horrific student, I was a loser. And so I was accustomed to not being liked or made fun of. And I think that's not a bad background to come into a business that's 95% rejection and 5% compliments, right? Yeah. So I came into the business definitely with the attitude that I was surprised if people liked me, surprised if they were willing to go along with me, and I was delighted to have something positive coming back as a working woman. That being said, I had to learn to deal with rejection of real estate, because you certainly get enough chances to deal with it. But I learned that in building my business, that the key was not ignoring rejection or not trying to skip over the pain. But the most important piece was taking less time feeling sorry for yourself. When you get hit in the gut, or somebody sends you the dreaded bouquet of flowers, which is their nice way of saying you've lost the deal. It was like a funeral wreath when they came to the office. What I always felt was, well, you know what? Let me take about 5 minutes, feel sorry for myself. I hate that customer. I hope they hate the apartment they bought. I swear. But then I would just say, all right, you had your 2 minutes of pity, get up and get going. And an interesting thing happened. My worst falls, the times that were the most, I guess the biggest public embarrassments, where I was really a little bit mortified in front of my salespeople, my industry, I learned that right around the corner, they were always my biggest successes. So I started believing in magic, that if you really take a big hit, if you just hang in there, some big good thing is coming down the pike, you know. Call it stupid or whatever, But I really found that every great big thing that I accomplished that was substantially instrumental in building my business came on the heels of a failure. I never got them any other way. And so I'm really not so good at bouncing back, although I think I have a low enough IQ. I think you need a low IQ to get back up and say, hit me again. But I think I'm very, very good at not feeling sorry for myself. And you know, it's a big dividing line. If you're not going to feel sorry for yourself, you get a lot more done. You get going faster. Yeah.
Can I ask you if there's a guy or girl in our audience right here, and I'm sure there is, that personalise it and they lose a listing to another agent, and in Australia, Barbara, they don't normally send flowers. They just ring you up and say you haven't got it.
Those cheapskates.
Is there any tips of advice that you can help people that may have not been brought up with rejection and failure like you were at school? Any tips on developing that?
Yes, I think so. What I did for myself early in the game, because I didn't like the rejection, I kept a scorecard, kind of like a prisoner on a prison ward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I kind of made a science out of how many no's I got before I got to a yes. How many people, you know, used, abused you, spent your taxi money, spun your wheels, and then bought from the next guy. And that would be another stroke after 5 or number 6. I think the only way you get good at it, like in anything, is practice. Right. And so I saw it as rejection practice. I just felt like I was going to get really good at it if I got enough under my belt, like up at bat. So I made a science or math of the whole thing. And why that helped me, I'm not saying it's good for everybody, but it took the personal piece out of it. It kind of distracted me to the numbers versus it being about me.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you, when someone rejects you, it's always personal. People say it's not personal. It's always personal. And so you got to find a way to move on, you know, or be distracted. And that helped me keeping a score. And you know what's great about that? I found that I had to get like 7 to 8 rejections on average. And if I got one at 6, an acceptance, it was like, oh man, look what's happening here. It was a bonus, yeah.
Okay. Fee cutting and commission discounters in your marketplace where you worked, was it an issue?
It was a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you have to realize, yeah, go ahead, please.
I'd love you. This is a big issue to the audience that's in this room. This is an issue that they confront.
Yes. Here's the problem with it. It diminishes you, as though all agents are equal, and they are not. In my market, the standard rate was always 6%. On a very high price listing, you could get 5%. Now, I know your market is less, your commission rates are lower, but there is a standard, and there was in my market, always is, still is. When we had the discount houses come in, they were quoting 2% opposed to 6%. That's very tantalizing in a seller's market to go with them, okay? But I see it as an opportunity to explain to the seller that all agents are not equal, and they're not even within the same office. There's winners, losers, and everybody in between. So I think the charge there is to showcase why you're different and why you'll get the more money. I have another theory about it, which is people that go for discount brokers are the kind of people that like to get wholesale prices on the new suede suit. You know, it's a certain mentality, okay? And no matter what you do, you're not going to change them if that's their mentality. But you get the great middle ground that can be swayed and can pay a higher commission if you're persuasive enough as a salesman. And nothing's more appealing than rejecting it, to have people want it, want you know? So sometimes saying, I wouldn't even consider it, they start pursuing you a little more just from the get-go. But the one thing I have learned is when you look at what the negative is, it's very dangerous business because it can make you feel diminished and like you have a disadvantage in this game and you self-defeat. So I come from the other school that never looks at what the competition is doing, that never looks to see what the next guy's got over me. I just don't allow it to enter my psyche because it's going to defeat me. So I just like think what I got and listen to what I got. And if you don't want to listen, let me tell you again. So I think focusing on the negative or what is an advantage to your competitor is poison business. I remember one year in my life when we were maybe 4th or 5th in the marketplace, I kept a careful tag on the listing count of every one of my larger competitors. I was like a scientist for a year. It was the only year I didn't grow. And after that year, I realized I'm so busy watching their business. I'm not taking care of mine. And I decided I would never look at what they're doing again. The next time I looked, I was #1 because I ignored them. I think there's power in ignoring what you're afraid of and just doing your own thing better. That's what I think.
Okay, gang, that's a round of applause. That I think, because I think what happens...
Not deserved yet. My gosh, we're just getting started.
Listen, I've got to say, John McGrath, who's the founder of AREC, who's here, he says to people that talk about commissions and what other agents are doing and they're 1% less or 2%, John says you should sometimes go in the approach that there will be an agent that will charge 0%. So don't worry about that. Worry about how much value you'll bring, how much show more, do more, give more. Focus on what you've got control of.
He's so right.
Yeah.
He's so right. Let me tell you something else that happened running 1,000 agents in New York City. Some of them making $7 million a year. The average salesman making $48,000 a year. That was the average. And many going out of business. Huge turnovers here, as they are in Australia, probably 30%. I found that the same agents always negotiated a commission. It's almost like a dog could smell the scent, like a seller's the dog, and he could smell that you're weak. I had my same agents come to me as their boss all the time asking permission to take less of a commission. And never did I have my top agents approach me. They always got top dollar. I think you can get into a dirty habit of thinking you have to negotiate. It's all in the head and the seller can pick it up. I'm convinced of it because the same agents negotiated the commissions and the great majority never did. And I found that very odd until I realized the agent was the problem. No agent's that unlucky to always run into the seller who asked about the commission. And when I was asked to negotiate my commission, because I was so young at 23 running a business, I would immediately say, I'd be happy to talk to my father. I didn't even have a father in the business. But that gave me breathing room. And then I came back the next day and said, I talked to my father. He almost took my head off. He said, absolutely not. And that was done. And you know, they usually rolled over.
Okay. Can I ask you, you talk about the agents that you had. So apart from listing and selling real estate yourself, you employed, how many people, how many estate agents or real estate people have you employed in your career in real estate? Hundreds?
You mean how many did I hire, train, and fire?
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe 8,000.
Okay. Can I touch on that? You must have seen a common denominator of that 1% of the 8,000 that were very, very good. What are some of the traits that you saw of these?
You know, they all had the same thing in common. Probably 2 or 3 traits, always. Yet their style and execution was so vastly different, I was fooled by a lot of that for a lot of years. And if you're building a real estate company, the most important trait you have as the owner is to choose people with potential that are going to be winners. Not easy. So in the early years, I would think that if someone had the right credentials, went to Harvard, got a Harvard MBA, knows all the people on Park Avenue, belonged to all the right clubs, was someone I should try to get. And I certainly had many of those people working for me. But what I can say is that that was very helpful for introductions, but after a year, it made no difference. What I learned was the only important difference between the real winners making all the money and everybody else was when they took the hit, how they handled it. And this comes right back to what I said earlier. My superstars, the big winners, they really weren't smart enough to lay low after they were hit. They were like, I'm up again, hit me again. What are they, nuts, right? The other singular trait, I would say, second to the ability to take the hit and keep going, get up, get up, get up, was they were all competitive. They didn't like losing. That competitive spirit was responsible for most of what they produced. And then if I was going to say one-third trait, I would say insecurity. Every one of my top agents was a nut job. They really were. In January, I would have my top agents line up to see me. Wanted a meeting. Why in January? Why in January? You know what they all wanted? They wanted my reassurance that they'd make another deal. Crazy. They're making $6 million, $7 million, now $8 million. And in January, they're in my office explaining it's just potluck. They're saying to me, I know I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to do it again. These are the people that should have been rock solid and assured that they could do it. But these were the people that lined up to see me. My agents that were making no money were certain they were going to have a better year. Go figure. So if someone's insecure and has something to prove, it's like magic dust to a real estate agent. If I could uncover that in an interview, someone who's got something to prove to somebody, whether it be the dad that damned them to hell, the mother who didn't love them, the kids that made fun of them, whatever it is, if I could uncover that in an interview and they're pissed over it, I know they're going to make me money.
Barbara, is it like, I mean, is there a test that you can use at a job interview that you can find that out? I mean, or are people too unpredictable?
Well, I have a routine. I don't think it's a test, but I taught it to all my managers. They still use it today. It's for the agent who has no track record, which is the great majority of who you interview for a real estate sales position, right? And this is my routine if you would care to use it. I don't know why it would just apply to New York. I would run the interview and chat the person up and try to find out about them as an individual. And then I would say, you know, there's 2 traits that all my top salespeople share in common, and would you like me to share them with you? Would that be helpful? And then the agent would, of course, say, of course, because I'm the boss, right? And then I would say the first one is empathy, the ability to read between the lines, to really size up people and understand if somebody says black, they mean white. If they say white, they might do red. Because buyers are liars, as we all know if we're in the real estate business. All right. So I would say to the person, I know you have that trait. You're so good with people. I could tell from what you said, blah, blah, blah. I never had anyone sit across my desk who thought they didn't have an empathy trait. They all think they have it. They don't. A lot of people suck reading people. Okay. So they would agree, and then I would say, but there's another trait that I'm not getting from you, and I'm worried. And I'd say, what I don't get from you that I get from all my top agents is an aggressiveness, an insistence on winning. And then I'd shut up and watch. And let me tell you, the people that were insulted, I hired. Because I'm telling you, you could feel the energy. If it was legal, I think they'd reach over and choke me, you know? They were like, oh, you read me wrong. Like I insulted them to hell and back. All I said was, I don't think you're aggressive. And then they would come at me. Well, you might not know I'm aggressive because I haven't worked, blah, 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 blah. They came, then I saw the fire and I hired them. That was my trick or routine, if you want to call it. But I really found it separated the men from the boys and the women from the girls.
Okay. Can I ask, for the people that are in this conference here that are trying to find ways to meet more people, I want to find out, the way that you used to go about business, were you someone that was a big networker, or were you someone that was a cold caller? If you can look back, so was it at age 23 that you got into real estate?
Yes, yes.
Okay, if you can think back to that period, those first few years, before you became this attraction agent where people started coming to you, do you remember what were the activities that you were doing to get picked?
Yeah, very, very much so. One, I wrote very clever spot ads, which was the internet of that day. I just could write good copy, tease with my words. Okay. But beyond that, the word networking, I think, is what you want to focus on, not advertising. I think for me, I discovered one thing that I was good at, and I ran it up the flagpole. And you don't have to be good at everything. Cold calling, you know, I can't even say I tried it, promoted it, or taught it. Because for me, it was so depressing that I think I'd rather become an alcoholic. So what I discovered early was public speaking. And I came at it through a back door because I was invited to give a speech when I was 24 and I lost my voice. I was embarrassed. So I was going to hide, but then I decided I better get over myself. You know? And the next morning I wrote a course syllabus and started teaching a real estate course for agents. I was only an agent myself for a year. But they let me do it at night, and I had eight would-be agents in my room. And I was only teaching because I wanted to get over my fear of public speaking. But I got over it in that course because I confronted my devil. And after that, I started reaching out to every attorney in New York that was teaching the real estate courses. They were boring, these attorneys. Teaching real estate law, people were snoring. And I said, invite me and I'll give you the real day in the life of an agent, whatever crap I put out there, okay? And they invited me in for a guest lecture. And that's when I met real estate agents, sellers, buyers. And before you knew it, 3-4 years later, I was the go-to girl for speaking in New York. I spoke at the Harvard Club, and they're listening to me, the dunce. What a joke, you know? But they had rich apartments, and they gave them to me. So I guess I'm exaggerating the length of time. It probably took me 7 or 8 years or so. But my networking was around my personality, which was I was a good speaker. I became a good speaker because I was so damn afraid of it. And as a result of being in front of audiences constantly, I got a lot of business. I imagine if I wasn't good at that, what I would have done is definitely focus on what I'm good at. You know, everybody's good at something. If I couldn't speak, I think I would have joined all the flower clubs in town because I'm a great gardener. I think if you stay true to what you enjoy versus hustling people, people find you. And it's more natural, and you open doors in your life. You're going to enjoy it and be your best self. So I always gave each of my agents at the Corcoran group a $2,000 budget per annum, which doesn't sound like a lot. But I gave them the money to spend on what they enjoyed doing to make sure they invited other people to come. If they were good cooks, they had people over for dinner. If they were into seances, they invited people to seances. They stayed true to what their personality quirks were. That was the only rule. And as a result, they each found their own people. Do you know what I mean? People that they related to. And that's always who you find as customers and sellers, when you're being true to yourself. Because people know when they're hustled. Even dumb people know when they're hustled, you know? And they see right through it. So I think when you're genuine, people get it. And they want to play with you. And if they want to play with you, they'll do business with you.
Okay. Are you a good negotiator? And I'd love to get your views on...
Yeah, I think I am.
You think you are? Okay. Can we talk
Talk
about...
to my husband, Bill. He doesn't have a chance. I even sold his car, and he didn't realize it till 2 months later.
Can I ask you tips on negotiation? Tips on negotiation.
With whom? Buyers or sellers?
Let's do buyers.
Okay. All right. I think the most important thing with any buyer is to establish control. Today, buyers come out with a spreadsheet and they think they know more than the agent. That's a problem. How are you going to get over somebody? Take control. If they think they're the hot shot and have researched all the marketplaces, know what the prices are, know which houses they want, what you've got to do is establish control and let them know you're smarter than them. Now, how do we do that? It depends on your style, you know? But a lot of people don't know how to do that. You better get good at it or you're not going to take control. I think with a buyer, negotiating tactics are little things along the way. It's about them looking to you for what should I do? What should I do? So if they come in really smart and knowing it all, you've got to finesse it in a way that they realize that your judgment is better than them. You know where the values are. You know which areas might be questionable. The internet doesn't show everything. I found when I was a young agent, I had a routine that if I couldn't pull it off in the front face, I never made a good negotiation with a buyer. And what I did was, when I got the buyer on the phone and they were focused on a particular property, which is typical of every buyer, we'd like to see this property. They're calling you the listing agent. We want to see this property. All right. They want a narrow service. They want to see your... The minute I got my hands on them, or sooner even on the phone, I would say, I would like to show you actually 3 properties that are very similar. I'd like you to give me an hour and a half of your time. I'd like our visit to be an education. If you have the time, I'll show you 5, 6, 7 properties. I'll get them done in an hour and a half. I started moving for control. Because if you don't get loyalty. And if you don't get loyalty, that's the best report card. You have no control. Once you get into the actual negotiation with the buyer, they should be afraid to make a move without consulting with you. That's the goal. And if you're any good at what you do, they should be consulting with you, you know? So far as what goes on with the buyer negotiation, there's a lot of tactics like along the way if you want to question me on that. But overall, the number one thing is you must establish control with your buyer to get loyalty. And I guess I'm not sure how your market works, where that lead comes from. It's a little different here than the city, New York City. But maybe you could tell me what that is, and then I could maybe answer it more clearly.
Look, the majority of buyers, Barbara, in Australia are coming from 2 internet portals. One's realestate.com.au and the other one is domain.com.au. It's a little bit like Zillow, you know?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So are they calling, with our Zillow controls the flow of the customer, make sure they land in the lap of who's paying versus who the listing agent is. Does it work that way in Australia?
No, in Australia, Barbara, the listing agent is the agent, has the lead, yeah. But I want to. I think a useful thing I'd love to talk about is also negotiation with. Is there any different with negotiating with vendors? Is it the same? Is it the same principles? Any tips on negotiation with vendors, with sellers?
The vendor in your language is the seller.
The seller, correct.
Yes. And when you say negotiating to get the listing or negotiating a price,
let's putting the deal together. Getting the owner to accept it.
Yeah, okay. That's a good question. I'm trying to think of a good answer, which doesn't come to my head. If you're the listing agent, before you're actually negotiating, you should probably pretty much know what the seller's moves are going to be and what they're willing to take and what's the obstacles in the way, what their circumstances, where they're moving to, do they need the cash out, what their timetable is. I mean, by then, it's almost like a marriage. You should really know the lay of the land.
Can I ask you, when you used to go in to get the listing, when you were out there pitching for the business, can you describe what, in the living room, what the conversation would sound like? When you're out there fighting for a listing, what would it look like and how would they go about picking you?
Okay. Well, you have to realize, probably similar to your market, typically a higher end seller sees 6 agents before they decide who they're going to see. So my first step was to always negotiate myself into the last position.
You believe going in last. You believe going in.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then you could question the other pitches and you can close the deal. You can't close when they have to see 2 more people, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So just inquiring, how many people are you seeing? I'd be happy to come. When are you seeing people? You can finesse that. You wind up in the last position. I couldn't always arrange it, but most times I could. All right. Now, the second part of going in is being prepared, of course, but I find that every agent is prepared today. They go in with the comps, the big books, the presentations, right? Okay. I think the most important thing then, if everybody's going to have similar material, is your team. I never walked into a listing without a big team. Why? Because it would blow them away. Now, originally I only had 1 half-time assistant. That's hardly a team. But I would get other agents to pose as my team. So I could walk in with 5 people. Okay. So I'd like to meet, remember, you're the front person, you're the one pitching. In the end, they're just going to see you anyway. Okay. Mrs. Smith, I'd like you to meet Jack Jones, he's in charge of listing appointments. Mary Smith, she's in charge of repair. Right away, you have a point of difference. You brought a whole team in with you, right? They don't even have to say anything. They just have to dress up and look good. And I bought a few people their outfits because they didn't dress well. Okay? So they had to look the part. Okay. They sit there, and I would be able to say, you got that? Did you get that? Thelma, did you get that? Pretty impressive. Okay. You might call that show business. I think I lost you again. 1 second. I got it. I'm getting used to sticking it back in. It's more like show business. And you might say there's no place for show business. In real estate sales, let me tell you, it's all show business.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 2 other very different approaches my top 2 agents use. Robbie Brown, the number 2 agent in all of New York City, would ride his bicycle and keep his suit with a band on the right or the left leg. And inevitably, people would say, oh, what's with the band? And he'd say, oh, it holds my trouser from getting caught in my bicycle wheel. Oh, you rode a bicycle? It was, what was it? Endearing, I guess. So right away, a seller's off the game, but here was his routine. He'd walk around in amazement. Amazement. I must say, don't ever sell this apartment. You'll never find anything like it. They would beg him to take the apartment. Show business. Sharon Baum talked me into buying a big-ass Bentley with a driver in a uniform. And her license plate on the back said, sold 1. A yellow Bentley. Listen to her routine. She got a buyer in the back seat. She had a whole display case of publicity with her in it. I'd be ashamed to be bragging, not her grandchildren, all about Sharon. And then she trained her driver to answer the phone because her office was calling her every 2 minutes whenever she had a customer in the car. And the driver would say, Mrs. Baum's car, Mrs. Baum's car. No, she can't talk to you, she's with the customer. Mrs. Baum's car, no, she can't talk to you, she's with the customer. By the time that customer got out of that Bentley, They thought they were the luckiest person on earth to have her attention. Okay. When she went on a listing pitch, she had her driver drive the car over there and park it in front while all the other agents made their pitches. Nobody else had a Bentley. She intimidated the crap out of them. Show business. Okay.
Okay.
You have to dress for the part. You have to have your team look the part. You have to schmooze it up. And then if all else fails, you have to reject the listing so they beg you to take it. I very often felt I wasn't going to get the listing and told them I had decided I didn't want it. Crazy as it sounds, people always want what they can't have. Yeah.
Okay. Barbara, as we come towards this end of this fantastic... By the way, guys and girls, has it been a great 40 minutes with her?
They already paid their price. They have no choice but to applaud.
Can I ask you, why do you think most agents fail? What do you think the reason is? Why do most agents fail? It's an incredible opportunity, control of your destiny. You can have a great life, yet so many people fail. What are the reasons?
Lack of aggressiveness, without a doubt. To be a great agent, to make a lot of money, I'm not talking to make a living. You could be a very nice person. You could have good people skills. You could work very hard and make a good living. You really could in this business. But to make a lot of money in the business and to be the top of the game, you have to be an animal. I don't look like an animal. And I think I'm a nice animal. But I'm an animal. I'm an animal. Certain things tick me off, Somebody talks down to me, I know I'm going to kill to get even. Okay? Someone rejects me, implies that I'm not smart. I'm coming back to teach them a lesson. I'm not very nice. Not to be mean to anyone, because I'm a nice person, but I'm aggressive. All of the people who succeed in this business, in any business, are aggressive. You have to be aggressive. It's a contact sport, sales. All right, but that being said, what was your question? I think I got off on the kilt. What was your question, Tom?
Why do most agents fail?
Oh, failing. They select themselves out of the business. Everyone I met with on Fridays to fire because they couldn't succeed in real estate. Friday was my firing day. They were the most diligent people, spending the most time at the office, selecting apartments for people on a computer screen, almost like, wake up, selecting. They knew everything coming in. They were thorough. They didn't miss a thing. But they missed the main picture, which is the word with a customer. You can't make a sale in the office. I used to, when someone was struggling with sales, have them come back to me and tell me, I give them 3 more months to try, but I told them to come back to me and keep a record of how many hours they're in the office. And I told them they couldn't be in more than 2 hours a day. Might sound mean, but I said, find something to do outside, even if you have to go to a movie and sit next to the ugly guy. Maybe he's going to buy an apartment. You got to be outside.
Right.
This is an outside business. The more you're outside, even playing checkers with the guy down the street, you never know who he knows. The highest price sale we ever made was done by a young salesman that I threw out of the office. I thought he had talent. And you know what he said? He said, I might as well go get my teeth cleaned. I'm not making this up. The guy who was in the chair before him was the chauffeur of a Guggenheim. Within 2 weeks, he had a listing for $11 million. The chauffeur introduced him to Mrs. Guggenheim that he met in the dentist office. Go figure, it's nuts, right? You can't find work in the office. Anything you do outside the office has a better shot at getting you business than being inside.
Yeah, Barbara, we call agents that sit in the office, we call them adult daycare centres.
Oh no, that's mean. You don't even look like a mean guy, Tom.
No, I'm nice like you.
I don't know.
Barbara, can I ask you, like rituals, habits, patterns of behavior, even to, like, I'm thinking, you must be financially rich, like, you know, with all these, you've invested in 80 businesses now due to the show, and money mustn't be an issue in your life. Would it be fair to say?
No, surely, yes.
Okay, but you still got the hunger, the hustle, you can still feel the aggressiveness is there. What drives you? I'm curious.
It's exciting. When I sold my business for $66 million, no one was more surprised than me. It was only the year before I made $1 million. I was shocked. Before that year, I made less money than my average sales agent. For 22 years, I never made money. I plowed it back into the business. When I couldn't spend enough and made $1 million, I was shocked. I'm like, something's wrong. We probably need a new accountant. But I never worked for the money. I just wanted to see how far I could go. That was my fun part, you know? And still, I want to see what's next. You know, it's not, well, maybe for some people it's about the money, but I know with my fellow sharks on the show I do, it's not about the money. Mark Cuban is a billionaire. I'm a millionaire. He's a billionaire. He doesn't care about the money. He really doesn't. He cares about having fun. I care about change. Oh, what's around the corner? What am I going to get today? Oh, what's going on?
Can I ask you?
That's what keeps you young and vital.
Can I ask you, on the show, who's the investor that you admire most? You know, and why do you think they did so well?
Well, I admire, I'm not trying to give you a political answer, but I do admire each of my fellow sharks because they're all self-made. They came from nothing and made great success of their life. So they all, but if you're asking me who do I admire most as a fellow investor,
Yeah.
Definitely Mark Cuban. I'll tell you why. He has more money than everybody, so he spends more. That's like cheating at success, but that impresses me.
Yeah.
I like the way he negotiates that if I make an offer of, I'll give you $600,000 for 20%, full price. Mark will say, I'll give you $1.6 million for 10%, and I'll hire your wife and pay for your kids' education. Not really, he doesn't go that far. But he blows me out of the water. So I admire his ability to throw anything at people to get his way, you know. But can I tell you what is so terrific about working with each of those people? Is they're really dedicated to the entrepreneur that we're investing in. We all adopt them as children. We want to see them have the same big success we each had. And in the end, that's where you get your satisfaction from. None of us make much money on Shark Tank. Don't be fooled by what you read. You know, it's a game where you throw a lot of money and make a little back. Yeah, they're little businesses. You know.
Okay. Barbara, this is towards the end of this conversation, and I'd like you to think about you talking to yourself as a 23-year-old agent. By the age of 23, I'd read that you'd changed 20 jobs. You've agreed that your academic record was not good, actually poor, and you're sitting there and you're talking to yourself now with all the knowledge that you have. What would you be saying to your 23-year-old self about a real estate career of success? And I want everyone to take their pads out and pens because I'd love to finish on some strong bullet points. What advice would you give to you about succeeding in real estate?
I would, number one, tell myself that my greatest asset was my personality.
Yep, personality.
And the more true I was to my personality, the more I was myself versus trying to impress people, the more they would love me. Because people really want the real deal. You don't want to be fancy. You could dress fancy, of course, for the job. But they really want the real deal. They trust the real deal. So the more authentic you are, I think the better traction you have with everyone.
Yeah.
I would tell myself that it was an entirely fair business, a commission-based business. And the better you are at it, you are definitely paid. You're not asking anybody for a raise. You're not getting anything you don't deserve. You work your ass off and constantly try to make yourself better. Your income will automatically go up. I would tell myself to trust that, you know? I would also tell myself that in the hard times, when everybody else is laying low, that's when you can make your most money. That's when I made my most money. When everybody's bitching and complaining that the market's uncertain or prices are falling or whatever's wrong, realize that people are biting the dust and it's to your advantage. I think I would have known then if I go into a real estate recession where I didn't know how I was going to pay the damn bills and how I was going to make it through, that I would come out of the real estate recession with less competition. Yahoo! They died and I didn't. You know? And so when the market's thin, when people are disheartened, it's always open to a new idea, a new person, a new change. The world is listening, you know? And then the last thing, and this is going to sound like witchcraft, so believe me if you want, don't believe me if you don't. But I found when I just would take a leap of faith and really commit to something, as an agent, as a principal, as a company owner, when it seemed like there was no reason to, I felt like there was something in the universe that heard me and rallied to the cry. I don't know what it was. Doors opened, the right agent walked in, the developer handed me a job. It was like if you could get yourself in that zone, you're like a magnet. You know, you attract stuff, you know. So I think I worked hard at becoming positive, but that's the easy part. The hard part is getting on negative when you're negative. And I think I'm very tough on myself. I don't allow myself. Weird thing happened yesterday, day before yesterday. I was running to get a taxi for my husband. Should have let him get his own goddamn taxi. And I fell and slammed my knee with such pain I couldn't get off the street. I thought I was going to be hit by a car. Okay. The most amazing thing happened while I was happy it happened. I'm limping around now, of course. But nothing broke. I had an x-ray today. Here's what happened. As I was falling through the sky, I looked up and I thought, oh, thank God, I'm in front of a hospital. And here's what I liked about that thought. By the time I got home, I said, you know what? I'm a really positive person that all I could think about, thank God I'm in front of a hospital. I think I formed a habit over all these years of staying positive. And it is a habit, and when you're negative, it's a nasty habit. And I started there, remember. I started with the habit of telling myself I couldn't do, because I never could do as a kid. But I've rewired my head. And that's the most optimistic message of all, with any people accomplishing anything. You can rewire your head. It's what's going on in there that takes you back or pushes you forward. And you really have to declare war. You know, and I think I'm still getting negative. Like, I almost killed my husband. Because guess what my husband said to me as I limped back to him, hopping on one foot? He said to me, did you get my hot dog? I wanted to take that hot dog. I didn't. I threw it away. I wouldn't let him eat it. But it was funny because the upside of that little fiasco scared me like crazy, was that I realized I had gotten pretty optimistic. And so I was happy it happened, to remind myself that I got myself an A on my report card yesterday, you know?
Okay. Barbara, I think you've gone a long way helping us rewire our brains for today and hopefully for beyond. Can we give Barbara Corcoran a big round of applause here?